The millionaire hid cameras to protect his paralyzed son until he saw what the maid did. Daniel Carter was sitting at the head of a long oak conference table in a boardroom on the 23rd floor in the heart of downtown Chicago. Behind the glass wall stretched the familiar gray winter sky, skyscrapers standing motionless like cold concrete monoliths. In front of him, senior executives were taking turns presenting growth charts, new projects, and multi-million-dollar figures projected onto a white screen. Daniel nodded out of habit. His eyes were fixed on the screen, but in truth, his mind had drifted far away. For 6 months now, he had been sitting in rooms like this every day, listening to discussions that once defined his entire life. Work had once been the one place where he felt in control of everything. Now it was merely a temporary refuge, something to keep him from facing the empty house waiting for him every night. The phone in his suit pocket vibrated softly. Daniel frowned. No one was allowed to interrupt him during meetings like this. He slipped a hand into his pocket, intending to silence the notification, but when he glanced at the screen, his heart skipped a beat. The home security camera app. He hesitated for a second. Then, as if pulled by an invisible force, Daniel unlocked his phone. The small screen displayed a familiar image of his kitchen at home, and Daniel Carter's world stopped. Leo, his son, was sitting on the cold kitchen floor, his legs stretched out in front of him, completely still. The boy was wearing a beige hooded onesie, the very outfit Emma had bought for him just weeks before the accident. In Leo's hands were 2 wooden spoons, and in front of him were stainless steel pots turned upside down, arranged in a rough semicircle. Leo was smiling, not a weak or forced smile, but a wide, uninhibited grin that revealed tiny baby teeth, his brown eyes sparkling with light. His laughter rang clearly through the phone speaker as he struck the spoons against the pots, creating chaotic metallic sounds, noisy, clumsy, and overflowing with life. Daniel stopped breathing. How long had it been since he last saw that smile? 6 months. 6 months since the car flipped on the highway. 6 months since Emma never woke up. 6 months since Leo had been unable to stand again. And then Daniel saw her, Anna Morales, the housekeeper he had hired less than 2 weeks ago. She was lying flat on her stomach on the kitchen floor, her blue uniform wrinkled, yellow rubber gloves still on her hands. Propping her chin on her palms, she faced Leo at eye level. Every time Leo hit the rhythm just right, Anna clapped her hands, laughing loudly, cheering as if she were watching the greatest performance in the world. "Well done, Leo. You're the best drummer I've ever seen." Her voice came through the phone, warm, vibrant, completely free of pity. Daniel clenched the phone so tightly, his knuckles turned white. Around him, the meeting continued. Someone was talking about a new contract. Someone was asking for his opinion. But Daniel heard none of it. All he could see was his kitchen at home, a place where a stranger was doing what he, Leo's own father, had been unable to do for 6 long months. Something tightened painfully in Daniel's chest. It wasn't quite anger, not entirely gratitude either. It was a tangled, aching emotion with no clear name, like seeing a piece of his life he thought he'd lost forever suddenly come back to life through someone else's hands. "Daniel." The CFO's voice pulled him back to reality. Daniel looked up, his eyes empty. He had no idea what they had just said, no idea how many minutes he had missed. He knew only one thing. He could not stay here for another second. "I need to go home. Right now." Daniel stood up abruptly, grabbed his coat and phone, and walked out, ignoring the stunned looks around the table. No explanation, no apology. Because in that moment, every contract, every number, every business empire he had spent his life building became meaningless. All he could think about was the kitchen in the Chicago suburbs, where his son was laughing and where a painful truth was beginning to reveal itself. As the conference room door closed behind him, Daniel Carter strode quickly toward the elevators. But while his body was moving forward, his mind was pulled violently back 6 months, to an evening he had never truly escaped, no matter how hard he had tried to forget. The accident happened on a rainy night. Emma was sitting in the front passenger seat, turning around to smile at Leo in the back. She had just said something about dinner, about taking their son to the park near Lake Michigan over the weekend. Daniel couldn't remember the exact words. He only remembered Emma's laughter, soft and familiar, like a permanent fixture of his life. Then everything happened in seconds. Blinding headlights from the oncoming lane, the screech of brakes, the steering wheel slipping out of control on the wet road, the car spinning sideways, metal slammed into metal, glass exploded. The most terrifying sound wasn't the impact itself, but the silence that followed. Daniel regained consciousness in the ambulance, his head pounding as if it were about to split open. He turned toward the passenger seat and called Emma's name, but there was no answer. Her face was still, her eyes closed as if she were asleep. Only too still. Leo was screaming in the back seat. That cry has haunted Daniel ever since. Emma died before reaching the hospital. Leo survived, but his spinal cord was severely damaged. The doctor spoke calmly, professionally, but every word that reached Daniel's ears felt like a hammer blow. The chances of him walking again are very low. Daniel nodded. He didn't cry. He didn't react. It was as if his mind had shut itself down to protect him. The days that followed passed in a haze. The funeral, white flowers, awkward hugs, hollow condolences. Daniel stood there like a breathing corpse, listening to people talk about what a wonderful woman Emma was, what a great mother she had been, as if he hadn't already known that. The first night back home, Daniel stood for a long time outside Leo's room. His son lay in the small crib, his tiny legs motionless, his face pale after surgery. Daniel looked at him, his heart feeling as though it were being crushed in someone's fist. Every time he looked at Leo, he saw the car flipping over. He saw blood. He saw Emma. He saw himself, one single moment of inattention on the highway, and the price it had cost, an entire lifetime. From that day on, Daniel began to run. He buried himself in work, took on more projects, extended his hours. He left home before Leo woke up and returned after his son had already been put to bed. He told himself he needed money. For treatment, for the best doctors, for everything Leo would ever need. But the truth was, Daniel couldn't bear his son's gaze. In those large brown eyes, he saw questions he couldn't answer. Why didn't Mom come back? Why can't I stand up anymore? And most of all, why does Dad look at me like I'm a wound? Daniel hired nanny after nanny. Some were too full of pity, speaking to Leo in voices heavy with sorrow. Others were too cold, caring for his son like a task to be completed. No one made Leo laugh. No one made that house feel alive. And Daniel, instead of staying and learning how to face the pain, chose to control everything from a distance. Hidden cameras. At first, it was only a passing thought, a safe solution, a way for him to feel at ease when he wasn't home. Daniel contacted a high-end security company and requested a system that no one would ever be able to detect. Tiny cameras were installed inside wall clocks, electrical outlets, ceiling corners, even picture frames in the hallway. They ran 24 hours a day, missing not a single moment. He told himself he was doing it to protect his son, to make sure no one would ever hurt Leo. But deep down, Daniel knew it was just another way of avoiding presence. He wanted to see everything without having to participate. In the evenings, after returning from the office, Daniel didn't go straight into his son's room. Instead, he sat in his study, the desk lamp casting light over his exhausted face, and opened the camera app on his tablet. He replayed the entire day. He watched Leo eat. He watched Leo sit alone. He watched Leo cry, then quiet himself. He watched adults pass by without noticing the look in the boy's eyes, eyes searching for something. Daniel watched, and yet he didn't dare step inside. The cameras gave him a sense of control, but at the same time, they created a safe distance, an invisible wall separating him from his son. He could turn off the screen at any moment when the emotions became too heavy. He didn't have to face Leo's gaze directly, didn't have to hear his son calling out, didn't have to touch the pain that hadn't yet healed. And then Anna Morales appeared. She arrived on a Monday morning, dressed simply, speaking softly. Daniel barely paid attention. To him, Anna was just another name on a list of people who came and went. But the cameras missed nothing. From the very first days, Daniel noticed something different. Anna didn't rush through her work. She didn't turn on loud music to fill the silence. She talked to Leo, even though the boy could only respond with broken sounds. She waited for his reactions, patient as if time itself didn't matter. Daniel watched through the screen and felt uneasy. Not because Anna was doing something wrong, but because she was doing something right. In a way he himself had never dared to do. The elevator doors opened. Daniel stepped inside, his heart pounding. The elevator doors slid shut with a dry ding, echoing inside the cramped space. Daniel Carter stood alone inside, his back pressed against the cold metal wall, his hand still gripping his phone tightly. The camera footage was still playing. Leo kept striking the wooden spoons against the stainless steel pots, each hit clumsy but bursting with excitement. Anna clapped along to the rhythm, her laughter blending with his son's, creating a sound Daniel hadn't heard in that house for 6 months. He rewound the video, then rewound it again, a third time, a fourth. Each time he watched, Daniel noticed another small detail he had missed before. The way Anna leaned closer so Leo wouldn't have to strain his neck. The way she waited for the boy to look up before speaking. The way she never seemed rushed, as if nothing in the world mattered more than that single moment. The elevator descended at a torturously slow pace. 23 floors. Daniel felt every passing second as an unbearable delay. He had never been this impatient, not during billion-dollar deals, not when signing contracts that determined the course of his career. This time was different. This time he needed to get home. When the elevator doors opened in the basement, Daniel almost rushed out. He walked quickly to his car, opened the door, and started the engine. The motor roared in the enclosed space, but he didn't care. Rush hour in Chicago was a wall of traffic. Red light after red light, horns blaring everywhere. Daniel drove almost on instinct. Every time he stopped at an intersection, he glanced at his phone screen. The video was still there. Leo was still laughing. Anna was still lying on the floor. One question kept looping in his mind, relentless, inescapable. How could a woman he barely knew anything about do what he, his own father, had been powerless to do for 6 long months? The car turned onto the road leading to the suburbs. Familiar houses came into view. Daniel took a deep breath, feeling his heart pounding hard in his chest. Daniel Carter opened the side door of the house slowly, almost without making a sound. But the moment the door closed behind him, that familiar noise still echoed through the space. Metal striking metal, chaotic, uneven, yet strangely alive. Leo's laughter. Daniel froze in the narrow hallway leading into the kitchen. His heart pounded so hard he felt as if it might echo in his chest. 6 months. It had been 6 months since he had heard that sound inside this house. He didn't move forward right away. Daniel stood there, his back against the wall, drawing in a deep breath as if bracing himself for something overwhelming. Then he took a few more steps, just enough to see the entire kitchen. Everything was exactly like the video. Leo was sitting on the cold tile floor, his small legs stretched out, motionless. In front of him, stainless steel pots were turned upside down in a semicircle. In his hands, Leo held 2 wooden spoons, lifting them and bringing them down with pure excitement. And Anna Morales was lying flat on her stomach on the floor, her blue uniform wrinkled, her neatly tied hair slightly disheveled. Propped up on her elbows, she faced Leo, smiling brightly as if watching a performance she couldn't afford to miss. "That's it, Leo. Stronger this time." Her voice rang out, full of enthusiasm. Daniel felt his throat tighten. In the corner of the kitchen, Leo's black wheelchair rested against the wooden cabinet, silent and empty. The sight struck Daniel in the chest like a knife. It reminded him of everything his son had lost and everything he had failed to make up for. The wooden floor creaked softly as Daniel took another step. Anna turned instinctively. The moment their eyes met, the smile vanished from her face. Anna's eyes widened in shock. She scrambled to her feet almost immediately, hurriedly pulling off her rubber gloves, standing up so clumsily she nearly tripped over herself. "Mr. Daniel, you're home early." Her voice trembled. Leo stopped too. The wooden spoon slipped from his hands and rolled across the floor. He looked up at Daniel, large brown eyes flickering with a familiar trace of confusion, an expression Daniel had seen far too often in recent months. The look of a child who didn't know whether the man in front of him would stay or disappear again. Anna bent down quickly, gathering the pots. I've already cleaned the entire house," she said hurriedly, her breath uneven. "You can check any room you want. She continued quickly, "I just stopped for a moment because Leo was crying so much. I was going to play with him for a few minutes and then feed him." Daniel watched the scene, his chest twisting painfully. He was far too familiar with the sight of adults rushing to clear everything away around Leo, as if his son's joy were something wrong, something that needed to be put away as quickly as possible. "Put those pots away." Daniel's voice came out low and harder than he intended. Anna froze, 2 pots still in her hands, her entire body stiff. She slowly turned to look at him, eyes wide with worry. In that moment, Daniel realized what Anna was thinking. She thought she was about to be fired. "Please, Mr. Daniel," Anna said, her voice shaking as tears welled at the corners of her eyes. "I need this job. I swear I wasn't being lazy. The house really is clean. I wiped every room, cleaned all the bathrooms, folded the laundry. I even removed the stain on the sofa like you asked." She took a deep breath, trying to hold herself together. "I only stopped for less than 10 minutes, because Leo was so sad. I couldn't stand seeing him like that." Daniel crossed his arms and leaned against the kitchen doorway. He looked at Anna for a long moment, then shifted his gaze to Leo. The boy had lowered his head, his small hands clasped together, his shoulders slightly hunched. The smile from moments earlier had vanished completely, as if it had never existed. Daniel's heart tightened. "Do you know why I'm asking?" Daniel said slowly. "You were hired to clean the house, not to lie on the floor and play with my son." Anna blinked, confusion clearly written across her face. I was just playing with him, sir." "Why?" Daniel asked, his voice dropping. "Why did you lie on that cold floor and stop doing your job?" Anna was silent for a second. Then she placed the pots down, straightened her back, and looked directly at Daniel. The fear in her eyes was gone, replaced by something calm and deeply sincere. "Because Leo is sitting on the floor," she said. "So I sat on the floor too." Daniel went still. Anna continued, her voice steady, as if stating the most obvious truth in the world. "Children don't need adults standing above them, looking down. Children need someone at eye level. They need to feel that the adult is with them, not just watching." Something sharp pierced Daniel's chest. She went on, slowly but firmly. "If I stood there and looked down, I wouldn't really be playing with Leo. I'd just be another adult passing through his life." The kitchen fell silent. Daniel looked at Anna. Then he looked at Leo. And for the first time in 6 months he realized a truth so painful it stole his breath away. He had never once sat down on the floor with his son. The kitchen fell into a heavy silence after Anna's words. Daniel Carter remained leaning against the doorway, his arms crossed over his chest, but the posture no longer carried its usual sense of control. It looked more like a thin layer of defense, as if he were trying to keep himself upright after something deep inside him had just been struck. "You say it like it's obvious," Daniel spoke, his voice low and dry. "But you weren't hired to do that." Anna took a deep breath. She didn't lower her head in apology, nor did she list the tasks she had completed. "Maybe it's not written in the contract," Anna said slowly. "But I believe there are things that don't need to be requested in order to be done." Daniel frowned. "Such as?" "Such as not leaving a child sitting alone for too long," she replied. "Such as not pretending to be busy when you see a child who needs to be seen." Daniel felt his throat go dry. Anna looked at him again, her gaze neither defiant nor accusatory, just honest. "When I first came here," she continued, "Leo was sitting in his wheelchair, staring out the window for a long time. He wasn't crying. He wasn't asking for anything, but I could see it clearly. He was waiting for someone." Daniel clenched his jaw. "I tried talking to him," Anna said. "At first, Leo only made a few broken sounds, but I kept talking anyway, because children can feel when an adult is truly there." She paused briefly, then went on, her voice softening. "My grandmother used to do that with me." Daniel looked up. "Whenever I was sad or scared," Anna said, "she never stood above me and tried to comfort me. She always sat down, even when the floor was cold, even when her dress got dirty." Anna smiled faintly. "She used to say that if you want a child to feel that they matter, the first thing an adult must do is lower themselves, not to be smaller, but to be closer." Those words fell straight into a place deep inside Daniel, a place he had been trying to bury for 6 months. He thought of all the times he had watched Leo from a distance, from the doorway, from the hallway, from a phone screen, always standing, always looking down, never once sitting beside him. "Don't you think you crossed a line?" Daniel asked, his voice lower now. "Leo is my son." "I know," Anna answered immediately, "and I have never forgotten that." She took one small step forward, still keeping a respectful distance. "Precisely because Leo is your son," she said, "I couldn't pretend not to see him." Daniel let out a short, hollow laugh, one that held no trace of amusement. "You make it sound so simple," he said. "But for me, nothing is that simple." Anna looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I know," she said. "I don't live your life. I didn't lose my wife. I didn't witness that accident." Daniel clenched his fists. "But I see Leo every day," Anna continued, "and I see a child who still has so much to give, if someone is willing to stay long enough." The kitchen fell silent once more. Leo shifted slightly, lifting his gaze toward Daniel, cautious and uncertain. She moved slowly, lifting Leo and settling him into the wheelchair placed in the corner of the kitchen. "Leo wakes up every morning and looks toward the door," Anna said. "He doesn't cry right away. He waits." Daniel felt his heart start to pound harder. "He waits until he's sure you've already left," she continued. "Only then does he cry." "That's enough," Daniel cut in sharply. "You don't have the right—" "The right to what?" Anna asked, her voice trembling for the first time. "The right to see a child who is hurting?" Daniel spun around. "You think I don't see it?" he said. "You think I don't know my son is suffering?" Anna didn't step back. "I think you see it," she replied. "But you turn away." The words landed like a direct blow. Daniel clenched his fists. "You weren't in that car. You didn't hear metal being crushed. You didn't see my wife." He stopped. His voice broke. Lying motionless. Anna was silent. "You don't know what it's like to see that moment every time you look at your son," Daniel went on, his voice shaking despite his effort to stay composed. You don't know how hard I have to fight just to get out of bed every morning." Anna stepped closer, slowly. This time, the distance between them was no longer confrontational, but shared. "I believe you," she said. "And I'm not saying you're a bad father." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "It sounds like it." "I'm saying you're a father who is in pain," Anna said. "And because the pain is so deep, you've forgotten that Leo is in pain too." The words stole the air from Daniel's lungs. "Leo wakes up in the middle of the night," Anna continued. "He screams, not from physical pain, but from nightmares." Daniel squeezed his eyes shut. "He calls for his mother," she said. "Then he calls for you." Daniel felt his throat tighten until no sound would come out. "And no one comes," Anna said softly. "Not because you don't love him, but because you're trying to survive." A single tear fell onto the kitchen floor. Daniel didn't know whose it was. "Leo doesn't need a perfect father," Anna said, her voice gentle now. "He just needs you to be there." The kitchen fell into a silence that hurt. Daniel looked toward his son. Leo was looking back at him, eyes wide, holding something terribly fragile, hope tangled with a familiar fear. Daniel Carter turned his face away, drawing in a deep breath as if without it his chest might shatter right there on the spot. Anna's words kept echoing in his mind, every sentence, every syllable, sharp and unforgiving. He knew she was right, and that was exactly what he couldn't bear. "Everything you just said, I already know it all," Daniel spoke suddenly, his voice hoarse. Anna looked up at him, surprise flickering across her face. "The nightmares," Daniel continued, "the mornings Leo cries, the times he sits alone, staring at the door." He paused, his hand clenched so tightly it trembled. "Because I've seen it all." Anna frowned. "You've seen it how?" Daniel turned to face her fully. There was no turning back now. "I installed cameras in the house," he said. "Everywhere." The air in the kitchen seemed to freeze. "Cameras," Anna repeated, her voice dropping. "Hidden," Daniel went on, each word catching in his throat. "In clocks, outlets, picture frames. They record 24 hours a day." Anna took a step back. You were watching me?" she asked, her voice trembling with shock. Daniel spoke quickly. "Not because of you. At first it was because of the others. I needed to be sure Leo was safe. I couldn't trust anyone," Anna cut in, her voice suddenly sharp. She let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. "You looked at me like a threat," she said, "like someone who might hurt your son." Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came. "You watched me work," Anna continued. "You watched me talk to Leo. You watched me stay late. You watched me play with him." Her eyes reddened. "And you never told me," she said. "You never gave me the right to know I was being watched." A sharp chill ran down Daniel's spine. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know it was wrong, but You needed control," Anna said bluntly. "Not because of me, but because of your fear." Daniel lowered his head. Anna looked at him for a long moment, then asked, her voice trembling but resolute. "So in all those recordings, did you ever see me do anything wrong?" Daniel was silent. "Did you see me yell at Leo?" she pressed. "Did you see me leave him crying? Did you see me hurt him?" Each question cut like a blade. "Or did you only see me care for Leo with everything I had?" Anna asked, her voice breaking. Daniel closed his eyes. He had seen it all. He had seen Anna sit beside Leo for hours, talking to herself, seen her hold the boy's hand when he was afraid, seen her hum softly when she thought no one was listening. And that was what made him angry, not because Anna had done anything wrong, but because she had done what he, armed with the title of father, had not had the courage to do. "I saw you doing things outside your job description," Daniel said, his voice turning cold as if trying to shield himself. Playing with Leo when you should have been cleaning. Singing to my son when there was still work to be done. Anna stared at him. Then fire me, she said firmly. She bent down and grabbed the bag resting on the chair. If loving a child is crossing a line, Anna said, then I'm not sorry. Daniel felt his heart drop straight into an abyss. Anna turned away, preparing to leave. She didn't look back at Daniel. She didn't say another word. Her movements were decisive, swift, as if she were afraid that if she hesitated for even a second, she wouldn't be strong enough to walk away. Daniel Carter stood frozen. His body failed to react to what was unfolding before him. Everything in his mind slowed down, stretching into something painfully prolonged. He saw Anna's back turned, saw the tension in her shoulders, saw the moment the door was about to close, not just the door to the house, but the final door leading to the fragile piece Leo had only just begun to touch. Don't. The word slipped out of his mouth so weakly that even Daniel himself barely recognized it as his own voice. Anna stopped, just for a second, but she didn't turn around. Daniel felt his heart lose its rhythm, his breathing turning shallow and rapid. A pure, raw panic, the kind he had once believed existed only in the moment of the accident, rose up and swallowed him whole. Please, don't go. This time his voice broke completely. Anna turned back. There was no anger left on her face, but neither was there gentleness, only exhaustion and disappointment. What do you still want me to stay for? She asked. To keep being watched like a suspect? Daniel shook his head over and over. No, he said, his voice trembling. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Anna remained silent, waiting. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. For years he had been used to making decisions, to speaking with certainty, to controlling every situation. But now there was no strategy that could save him. I don't know what to do, he said, finally admitting it. I truly don't know. Those words seemed to fling open something deep inside him. I don't know how to be a father anymore, Daniel continued, his voice tightening. I don't know how to be a husband when Emma is gone. I don't know how to live in that house without seeing her everywhere. Anna tightened her grip on the strap of her bag. Every time I look at Leo, Daniel said, tears beginning to spill over, I see the accident. I see the car. I see Emma. I hear my son crying. He raised his hands to his face, trembling. I'm afraid, Daniel said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm afraid that if I get close to my son, if I love him the way I used to, then I'll lose him again. Anna held her breath. I can't survive another loss, Daniel went on. I've already lost my wife. I can't lose Leo, too. Tears slipped through his fingers and fell to the floor. I know installing the cameras was wrong, he said. I know I hurt you, but I didn't do it because I doubted you. He lifted his head and looked at Anna, his eyes red and swollen. I did it because I don't trust myself. The kitchen sank into silence. Leo made a small sound. He didn't understand everything that was happening, but he felt the tension. His tiny hands clenched the fabric of his shirt, his eyes fixed on Daniel. Anna followed that gaze, and then something on her face changed. The hardness slowly dissolved, replaced by a very real tenderness. You're not the only one who's afraid, Anna said softly. Leo is too. Daniel closed his eyes. But keeping your distance won't protect you from pain, she continued. It will only make you miss everything that's still there. Anna let the bag slip from her hand. The sound of it hitting the floor was heavy, but it was no longer an ending. She stepped slowly toward Daniel and stopped in front of him, keeping just enough distance. You need help, Anna said. Real help, from someone trained to give it. Daniel shook his head instinctively. I don't... You do, she interrupted, gentle but firm. because if you don't, this pain will consume you. And Leo, too. Daniel didn't argue anymore. He stood there, a man who once controlled an entire empire, now completely exposed before the truth. And for the first time in 6 months, Daniel Carter allowed himself to do the one thing he had avoided at all costs. He cried. "What if I can't do it?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling. "What if I sit there and all I see is the accident? All I see is Emma?" Anna turned back to look at him, her gaze steady. "Then I'll be here," she said, "not to replace you, but to help you get through that moment." Daniel took a deep breath. Then, before he could think any further, before fear could raise 100 reasons to stop him, Anna gently took his hand and guided him toward the kitchen floor. Daniel knelt down. Then he sat all the way down. For the first time in months, Daniel Carter was at eye level with his son. Leo's eyes widened in surprise. He looked at his father, then at Anna, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Anna picked up a wooden spoon and placed it in Daniel's hand, closing his fingers gently around the handle. "Just tap," she said. "Don't think." Daniel looked at the spoon in his hand. His fingers trembled slightly. He felt ridiculous, a grown man sitting on the kitchen floor about to strike a pot like a child. But then he lifted his hand, and he tapped. The metallic sound rang out, clear, full, echoing through the kitchen. Leo flinched slightly. Then the boy smiled, a small tentative smile, but so real it hurt. "Do it again," Leo said, his young voice soft and uncertain. "Dad?" The word exploded in Daniel's chest. "Dad?" Tears flooded his eyes again, but this time Daniel didn't turn away. He struck the pot again with the spoon, and this time Leo clapped his hands, his mouth releasing happy little sounds. The two sounds blended together, offbeat, messy, with no rhythm at all. But to Daniel, it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard in his life. The days that followed that afternoon moved at an entirely different pace. There was no miracle overnight. Daniel Carter didn't wake up and suddenly become a perfect father. The pain was still there. Memories of the accident still visited him in the hazy dreams of early morning. But one thing had clearly changed. Daniel was no longer running away. The next morning, he didn't leave the house before Leo woke up. Daniel sat at the kitchen table and had breakfast with his son. Just simple toast and warm milk, but Leo ate eagerly, glancing up at his father between bites, as if needing to make sure the man in front of him was real, not just a fleeting moment. Anna arrived early, as she always did, but this time Daniel was there. He watched the way Anna spoke to Leo, the way she waited for his responses, the way she never rushed. And instead of standing at a distance like before, Daniel began to join in, awkwardly at first, then more naturally. He learned how to sit on the floor. He learned how to play simple games that didn't require strong legs, puzzles, rolling a ball, telling silly stories that made Leo burst into laughter. Each laugh stitched something back together inside him. Daniel began to change at work as well. He declined endless meetings, delegated projects to his team. For the first time in years, he left the office while the sky was still bright, not because he had lost his ambition, but because he had found something more important to come home to. Leo no longer cried every morning when Daniel went to work. The boy knew his father would come back. Anna stayed in that house more fully, not just as a housekeeper. Daniel formally asked her to become Leo's full-time caregiver. He offered a higher salary, but more importantly, he gave her genuine trust. No cameras, no surveillance, no watchful eyes. Anna accepted without hesitation. "For Leo," she said, "and because you need someone to remind you that you don't have to go through this alone." Another major change came more slowly and with more difficulty. Daniel began therapy. At the first session, he sat across from the therapist with his hands tightly clasped, unsure where to begin. But when he spoke of Emma, His voice trembled. When he spoke of the accident, he broke down in tears, and no one asked him to be strong. Session by session, Daniel learned to name his pain instead of locking it away. He learned that being close to Leo didn't make the accident happen again. On the contrary, it was distance that had been hurting them both. Meanwhile, Leo began to change too. He slept better. The nightmares grew less frequent. He talked more, laughed more. The doctors noticed that Leo cooperated better during physical therapy, not because his legs had suddenly grown stronger, but because his spirit was no longer curled inward with fear. Small progress was celebrated like great victories. The day Leo managed to move his toes for the first time, Daniel knelt beside his bed, tears falling uncontrollably. Anna stood behind him, her hand resting on his shoulder, smiling in silence. 2 months later, on a mild, sunny afternoon, Daniel came home early and found Anna and Leo in the garden. Leo sat in his wheelchair, a ball resting on his lap. Anna tossed the ball to him. Leo caught it and threw it back with both hands. Laughter filled the garden. Daniel slipped off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and joined in. The three of them played until the sun sank behind the trees, dusk bathing everything in a warm golden glow. That night, after Leo had fallen asleep, Daniel sat in the living room across from Anna, a cup of hot tea between them. "I've started therapy," Daniel said, "and I think I'm slowly learning how to live again." Anna nodded. "I can see that." "I almost lost Leo," Daniel continued, his voice lowering. "Not because of the accident, but because of my own fear." Anna remained silent, letting him continue. "You changed our lives," Daniel said. "Mine and my son's." Anna smiled, her eyes soft with warmth. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," she said. "I just stayed." And Daniel understood that. It was staying, day after day, that saved everything.